Have you ever wondered why some conversations seem to flow effortlessly, while others are incredibly awkward? Or why certain speeches can inspire millions, while others simply fall flat? Well, that's because all of the communication concepts and theories that come into play. And trust me, these theories and concepts are not just for your textbooks. In today's episode of Communication Campus, I want to help you break down what these concepts and theories actually mean, and more importantly, what they can do to improve your communication in your everyday life. Let's dive in. Now, you're probably in a class where, and it doesn't matter what the class is, where your professor talks about the course concepts, or you're doing an assignment where they say you must include 4 or 5 concepts from your book. And that might make you wonder, what do they mean by concepts? I'm not sure I'm following. So let's start there. Now, communication concepts are going to be basic ideas that help us understand how and why we communicate the way that we do. Most commonly, these concepts are going to be bolded or italicized in your textbook to tell you that this is a vocabulary word. It's a key concept. It's a key idea that we in the world of communication, us scholars in this area, have researched and developed and named ideas, specific things that become our course concepts. So, for example, you might think about the differences between the message that is being sent and the meaning of that message. Or we might talk about how that meaning could be implicit or explicit. All of those words that I just used are communication concepts. They would be bolded and further explained and elaborated on in your textbook. So let's give you a small additional example, a quiz if you will. So we're going to talk about the miscommunication that is happening between person A and person B. And person A asks person B how they're feeling. Person B simply says, "I'm fine." Person A says, "Oh, okay, cool." They're completely missing the fact that there's been a miscommunication between the verbal and the nonverbal of that conversation. Okay, pause. What's the communication concept in that little scenario I just gave you? Is it A, verbal communication, B, nonverbal communication, or C, miscommunication? Well, hopefully you said it's the miscommunication, because verbal communication is an entire category of communication. It would possibly be the entire chapter that your book had included in this. It also isn't B, because nonverbal is not only a chapter, it's entire classes. So nonverbal communication wouldn't be the best fit as a course concept here. Well, that only leaves C, miscommunication. This example is an example of how miscommunication actually occurs. So the concept here that we want you to learn is miscommunication. That makes sense? Or have I miscommunicated with you? I hope not. The reason that this miscommunication is occurring, FYI, is because what verbally is being said, quote unquote, "I'm fine," doesn't match the facial expressions or the tone and the ways in which the "I'm fine" is being delivered. I know my mom used to tell me all the time, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And that's where miscommunication happens. If I say one thing, but all my facial expressions, my body, and my voice say something slightly different. That is an example of a communication concept. So every time we communicate, these concepts are at play, whether we realize it or not. And they're just little ways for us to break down and understand what's happening and give little labels to the things that we see and hear each and every day. Hopefully that makes sense, because now it's going to get slightly more complicated. Let's dive into our theories. Now, at its core, a theory is an explanation for how and why something happens. And in communication, theories help us understand how people interact, how messages are received, and how meaning is actually being created. Now, for something to be considered a theory, it has to go through a bunch of rigorous testing, and it has specific characteristics. So let's take a minute and break these down. First, a theory is based on systematic observations. Theories are not just personal opinions or guesses. Now, you do hear people say all the time, well, I have a theory about that. That's not an actual theory. Sometimes we call those armchair theories, that it's just their own personal thoughts and opinions. But those aren't the types of theories that we talk about when we're in communication. It's not just this, oh, I have an idea about this, or the colloquial way of people say, well, I have a theory. It's just an idea. What they're talking about is far different than what we are talking about in the world of communication and in most studies. Theories take research. They're developed through research by looking at patterns, and they are backed up with a wide variety of evidence. Now, for example, if you notice that people who make eye contact seem to be more persuasive, you don't just assume that this is true. You study it systematically. You observe people, you do experiments, and you analyze the data that comes from those experiments. So for one example of a theory that we've talked about within communication, we have the elaboration likelihood model. And this theory explains how people process and perceive different messages. Researchers don't just assume that persuasion worked in a certain way. They tested it through many, many, many experiments. And most of the theories that we talk about in our communication classes have been talked about and tested and retested for decades. So there's a reason that we have theory classes and why we talk about theory in just about every single one of our communication courses that you're going to take. Second characteristic of a theory is it helps to explain a phenomenon. Theories provide a framework for understanding real-world situations. They're going to help us answer questions like, why do people communicate the way that they do? What makes one message more effective than another? Or how does culture influence the communication that's taking place? One theory that might come into play in answering something like this is the social penetration model, or the social penetration theory. And this theory explains how relationships develop, starting with small talk, and then move deeper into more personal communication over time. We also like to call this the onion theory, that we talk about things on the crinkly side that's easy to talk about, but the deeper we get into that theory, the more likely you might cry, like the onion, but also it's just a little bit harder for us to have those conversations. Now, the third characteristic is that a theory must be testable and predictable. A strong theory allows researchers to make predictions and, most importantly, to test whether or not they hold true. If a theory says, for example, people who use more gestures seem more credible, we can test that by conducting studies. And we have done that. And we've done all sorts of research to support whether or not that eye contact, that use of gestures, the way that our bodies are positioned, has an impact on credibility. Now, lastly, a theory must be useful. It has to have a purpose. A theory can't be just for academics. It has to help everyone understand and improve their communication in the real world. Now, that doesn't mean that you yourself are going to find every single theory useful and helpful. Of course not. That's not how it works. But there has to be a bigger use for the theory, for someone, for different organizations per se. And theories also need to help us solve communication problems. And that's my favorite use of a theory. I am a big theory nut, and that's why I'm going to do so many more videos looking at each and every single one of the theories that we have. And I'm really excited to share those with you. But I like them because they really do help us solve problems. Why is this thing happening? Well, there might be a theory for that. One of my favorites is expectancy violation theory that explains why I might get really uncomfortable when people are standing and staring at me and I don't know why. I would never expect that someone would just stand there and stare at you and not say anything. I have an expectation that if you're going to stand that close to me, that you're going to communicate with me, that you're going to have something to say. And when you violate that expectation, it makes me feel uncomfortable. So we have theories that help us solve problems. We have theories that help us understand the world around us. And this is why it's so important. We need these theories to help us understand and, most importantly, explain what's happening. Without theories, communication just kind of seems random and unpredictable. Theories help us to see these patterns and understand why people communicate the way that they do. And it also helps us fix and modify our communication to be more effective and not just randomly trying different things, but if we have a theory to guide the choices that we make, our communication is going to be so much more effective. They also help us make sense of complex human interactions. I know everybody thinks that communication is so easy, and if that was the case, why are so many people horrible at it? Well, they're horrible at it because it's complex. And while there are some universal guiding rules, there's a whole lot of other rules within communication that are not universal, that are culturally bound, that are societally bound, that are just made up ideas as a whole that people just adapt and do. So, theories also help us predict future communication outcomes. A good theory is going to help us make predictions about what might unfold in different situations. So as I'm trying to foresee and plan a conversation that might take place, if I have a thorough understanding of communication theories, I can better predict what someone might say or do based on my own experiences. So it's important that media creators, public speakers, marketing people, public relations experts, and honestly anyone who wants to communicate effectively, to think about, read, study, and most importantly, apply communication theories to support and back up and drive what they do and why they do it. Now, theories help us improve communication as a whole, as I've mentioned, and it's, again, just even in our everyday life, we want to understand the process that is communication. We can't necessarily always change it, but we can improve it. There are all sorts of theories that help us improve our communication across a wide variety of areas. Yes, we have interpersonal communication and theories that related to that. We also have theories that help us improve our public speaking. We have theories that help us be more persuasive. And we have even more theories that help us understand culture and even theories to help us with conflict resolution. Theories overall shape what we do, help us predict what we might want to do, and help us explain what has happened. Theories aren't just academic ideas, They truly shape how we communicate each and every day. So, whether you are seeking to better understand them for your class, or you want to be more effective and confident in your own communication, theories are going to play a real big key into what you do. So next time you're texting a friend, watching a viral video, or even arguing with your roommate, remember, communication is not random. Concepts and theories are always at play. Now, if you want to learn more about how communication shapes your world, I want you to subscribe to Communication Campus so that you never miss an episode. And let's keep this conversation going in the comments. Tell me, what are some theories that you would like to discuss further? What are some concepts that aren't quite clicking in your brain? We can talk about various classes that you might be struggling with, or specific ideas and concepts, and of course, theories. If there's anything that I can do to kind of help you navigate your communication understanding, don't hesitate to reach out. Take care.